When you look at the New York Giants, this is a team that frankly has stagnated in a cycle of mediocrity over the past couple of years. Still only a few years removed from winning their second Super Bowl in the Coughlin-Eli regime. Yet, like I said, the last couple of years, it's been a team kind of toiled in that 6-10 mediocrity, that hell cycle of mediocrity, if you will. Now, obviously, Giants fans probably feel a little bit better about 2015 just because of the god that was Odell Beckham Jr. in his rookie season in 2014. But make no mistake about it, this was a Giants team that was very active in free agency before the 2014 season, and that big free agency splurge really didn't pay off and didn't produce the type of results that the organization perhaps was looking for. And it was going to be important in this year's 2015 NFL draft for the Giants to hit a home run and get some immediate contributors and get some guys that could not only help out Eli Manning on the offensive side of the ball, but just as importantly, begin that process of rebuilding on the defensive side of the ball. That defense was a big part of the identity of the Giants for so many years, and now you look over the years, guys like Osi Umenyiora and Justin Tuck have left for, I guess you would have said, greener pastures, but they're no longer in the mix. Yes, you still have Jason Pierre-Paul, but you could lose a guy like Linval Joseph as well. You lose Antrell Rolle in free agency. Just a bad state of affairs, frankly, for the Giants' defense. A defense that lacks at all three levels. So it was going to be important for the Giants to do something to address both sides of the ball in this draft. I don't think they had to come into this draft trying to focus too much on one thing or the other. They just needed to get good football players, and they needed to get guys that could come in and contribute right away and be long-term pieces to the puzzle. So in the first round, they selected Eric Flowers, the big offensive tackle from the U. So they got some protection for Eli Manning. They got a guy that at least initially, maybe if nothing else, worst case scenario, will man the right tackle position, allowing Justin Pugh to slide inside the guard where he certainly seems better suited. And perhaps they've got their long-term blindside protector in Flowers taking over that position for William Beatty. But then in the next few rounds, it wasn't really a surprise to me to see the Giants kind of focus on the defensive side of the ball. Because again, like I said, while you do have Eli Manning, and he's the franchise guy, and you have to build around him, the identity of this team and what helped them in large part to win those two Super Bowls was the defensive side of the ball. So it wasn't that surprising to me for a defense that really got old and not very good in a big hurry that the Giants were going to invest several picks on this side of the ball. They went ahead and traded up in round number 2 to go get Landon Collins, the strong safety out of Alabama. Then in round 3, taking Owa Odighizuwa, the defensive end from UCLA. Then even getting Michael Thompson, the safety from Texas. They devoted their next 3 picks after Flowers to the defensive side of the ball. Now, is there an Odell Beckham Jr. in this draft class for the New York Giants? Probably not. What I find really interesting about this draft class for the New York Giants, though, is that a lot of people love the pick of Landon Collins, and a lot of people love the pick of Owa Odighizuwa as well, as do I, especially for the Giants. But what I find interesting is there's perhaps no more polarizing of a first-round pick in this year's draft than Eric Flowers was. You had many people talking about how this guy was the best left tackle in this draft and worthy of a top 10 pick, and I kind of tend to decide on that portion of the fence, but you had an equally strong and vocal contingent of people that were sitting there and talked about how Eric Flowers was a massive reach at number 9, and they can't believe the Giants were this stupid, and they don't understand why Flowers was taken where he was, or even the second offensive lineman in the first potential left tackle taken, because they thought there were several offensive linemen on the board better than him. I mean, it was amazing to me when I looked at Eric Flowers. Either people really loved the pick or they really hated the pick, and I found that fascinating. I don't know that there was a more polarizing first-round pick in this year's NFL draft. I really, really don't. Now, in terms of the Giants looking at this draft, their best pick, I got to go with Owa Odighizuwa out of UCLA in the 3rd round. Here's a guy that can come in and play a role. Here's a guy that can play opposite Jason Pierre-Paul. I don't know if Odighizuwa is ever going to be a 12 or 13 sack a year guy, but I think he's a guy that can get 7, 8 sacks and be a really balanced, well-rounded defensive end. I mean, for them to get him in the 3rd round, just like other guys have gotten in the middle portions of a draft in the past, guys like Justin Tuck, a former 3rd-round pick. I believe Umenyiora was a former 2nd-round pick. Odigizua to me in many ways could potentially be that next guy in line, and I really loved his pick because I thought he was a borderline late first-round prospect, and to be able to get him in round number 3 was outstanding stuff. In terms of a pick that could surprise, I'll go to Landon Collins, their second-round pick. I applaud the Giants for moving up to go get this guy because they needed help at the safety position, and Landon Collins, getting him with the first pick of round number 2, that's about where he should have went, in my opinion. But I do think there's a potential here for Landon Collins to be a little bit better than advertised. I think he could be a little bit more than just a true in-the-box safety, even though most of us at this point in time do envision him as being just that, especially based off of what we observed out of him at Alabama. But I think in time he could develop into more than that, and he could be a real stalwart and a real playmaker for Coughlin in that Giants defense. Now, in terms of me, the biggest things I would second guess in this draft, it probably would be the selection of Eric Flowers. Now, the reason I would maybe point to second guessing this a little bit is because if I'm the Giants, man, you've got Gurley on the board. To me, Gurley's a higher rated prospect than Flowers. I might have to lean towards Gurley. Or when you look at how successful you were with Odell Beckham Jr. last year out of that draft class, you're in a position to get a guy like a Devontae Parker again this year. You've got Victor Cruz coming off of a major knee injury. You've got Ruben Randall entering a contract year. Maybe they should have double-dipped at receiver with the first-round pick and went with a guy like Devontae Parker, again, helping out a guy like Eli Manning. Might have seemed like a bit of a luxury pick, but when you really sit down and break it down, it's not as much of a luxury pick for the Giants as you might think. I like Flowers, and I think he is an NFL left tackle, and I think he could potentially be a really good one. And this could be a pick in a couple of years that we won't really mock or think about or question too much with the Giants. I just don't think Flowers was the best player available on the board. And for a team, especially with the general manager like Jerry Reese, that always prides themselves on taking the best available player, I don't think they did. So I'm wondering how they rated their players on the draft board. That's just what I'm saying. Now, overall, I do think Flowers will end up being a nice upgraded offensive tackle, but where? Is he going to be able to stick at left tackle long-term in the NFL? I think he can, but I'm not sure he's going to be there initially. It is a situation where you bring in Flowers, he upgrades one of your tackle positions, and you also upgrade another offensive line position potentially by being able to slide Pugh inside. Or worst case scenario, you've at least upgraded one position because maybe you play Flowers at left guard in 2015. Collins made a ton of sense to me. And it made a lot of sense for the Giants to peel up to get him. They didn't have to give up a lot to do so. I think they gave up, a fourth-round pick to do so? It made a world of sense for them. It was a matching of potentially best available player, and it was a major position of need. And Odigizua, I thought, was another steal at the defensive line position for a Giants team that's had many of those steals over the years. It was an okay draft for the Giants. It was almost solid. It wasn't great. I don't think this is going to be looked at in 3 years as one of the best draft classes to come out of the 2015 NFL draft. Maybe a guy like Thompson could come in and be a versatile contributor in that secondary, and that might help the ranking a little bit. But it was just a slightly better than average or middle-of-the-road draft class for me, even though I did like Collins and Odigizua. I don't really think outside of Thompson they were able to do much in terms of day number 3. So I'm going to give the Giants a C+. They could have done worse, but they most certainly could have done better.